the workbook is a lot of work that we need to write down. So
Yeah.
unit one, it's six activities, it's six questions, but the answers are a
Mm,
little long. It was
yeah.
longer than I thought it would be. So I was thinking as soon as I get there, we, I will consult again regarding that practical part, because I assumed that was about the practical part in the summative assessment.
Thank you for that one, Ryan. While you're talking, I'm thinking of what if I give you guys some sort of a timeline whereby I will excuse you maybe for like we are on the 4th today, and I will excuse you from the week of the 8th to the 12th, 15 to the 19th, and then maybe towards the end of the 19th, like maybe on Thursday, on the 18th, or maybe on Wednesday on the 17th, I'll come back. We have like a session whereby we do a follow-up session, and then we also discuss maybe the way forward on the practical side. Because as much as it's a lot, we need to complete it so that we will ensure that we have evidence that we looked at the workbook, and then now we also gonna complete the summative side of it, and then start the practical as well. So if maybe I can give you a week or 2 weeks, and then go back to you. And then while I'm giving you a week, Ryan, you mustn't like leave it completely. You can actually do few things on the practical side. That is why I introduced you to it so that you can start identifying maybe two people that you can use. Start talking with people that maybe are literate, they have like grade 12. They can be able to answer your financial questions, simple questions that you will create. So it can be a multiple choice, it can be a true or false, it can be discussed. So you'll just use a blend of questions. Like we said, you need to make sure that when you create questions, it uh, must be in line with Bloom's taxonomy. So you can start working on those things to make arrangements for your practical. Maybe you print out your unit standard, you put it aside, and then while you're putting aside, if you get time, you work around how you're gonna create your question paper. You see, as much as you are busy writing that, but there's something that is playing in your head. That is what I was trying to do, to make you think of that while you are busy. When you get time, you just write, you just spend time in answering those questions. Because the most important thing about answering those questions is learning as well, and those terminology, because they will ask you those questions and then you write it down. You're looking at your work on your learner guide, but at the same time, whatever I said, you start to recall that maybe I spoke about this, and maybe I made use of a school, I made use of a college, and then it starts to sink in, because that is the idea behind those type of formative assessment, which is the workbook in this case. So we will set up the follow-up session maybe after a week or after 2 weeks, to give you maybe a timeline. When you finish at work and you are back at home, you continue writing that workbook, because at the end of the day, you have to complete it. And then I also would like to remind those guys who haven't sent me their documents. I really need to have them, because you guys came as a group. So when I submit your stuff, I submit it as a batch of maybe 12 assessors who started in March, so that whoever comes and moderate that 11 people that are doing it now. So you are working as you'll be going as a group, and then you actually, I don't want you to be out of that group because of maybe outstanding document. So I need your copy, a certified copy of your ID, your maybe your matric certificate or any other qualification that you have, and your CV. The reason why I need your CV is because there are sections whereby I need to complete whether you are working, your address, your phone number, all the integrities of completing a form. So I punch all that because I'm putting you on a database for ETTPC as one of the candidates permanently. Because once I put you under Khetha training accreditation, you'll be there. You can go to any other institution and do another course. Whatever I would capture there, they will be able to pick it up because this is a national system that they use. Whoever is accredited, they can verify whether you have done assessor course and whether you were competent or whether you were not yet competent. So let us say you do it and then you drop out. Your record as a learner will stay there, and then maybe I can just punch not yet competent because you did not complete 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But just to have that formal record that you enrolled in this accredited institution and you were doing this particular program. Did you complete it? Yes, you were competent. You did not complete it? No, you were not competent. And then whoever look for your record, they will actually see that, oh, you are a candidate for HTTP and you did this particular unit standard and you passed it, or you did not pass it, or you were competent. So it's something like that. Please make sure you send your documents. And I'm still waiting for those. All right, let me just go straight to our today's unit, which is the feedback in terms of how do you go about giving feedback to your candidates. Let me know if you see my screen, but it looks like it has frozen. Don't know why.
We can see your screen, sir.
Yeah, but it's frozen. Can you see the PowerPoint?
I can see your screen.
You can't.
Let me try to rejoin.
Oh, okay.
I can see it.
Yeah, but it's frozen. I can't do anything. Please confirm if you can see my screen. Sorry about that. I just went out and came back. Can you see the PowerPoint slide?
Yes.
I can see you.
Wonderful, wonderful. because I just went out and came back. All right. Today we are touching on unit number 4, which is based on the manner to provide feedback on assessment. So this is a very important part, but sometimes it gets omitted through focusing on the conduct of the assessment rather than the important part whereby assessment enrich teaching and learning. Because when you provide feedback to a learner, you're trying to build a learner somewhere wherever they are lacking. So through feedback, you can actually assist. That is why there's assessment that is during the learning, teaching and learning, and there's assessment that is happened after teaching and learning. So during teaching and learning, feedback stage is very, very important in preparation for summative when one is as wrote formative assessment. So within this unit or chapter, we look into feedback in terms of it's given to relevant parties in accordance with confidentiality requirements in an appropriate sequence and within agreed time frames. So let's say I give you a test or assignment in a program that you might enroll in. There should be a stage whereby after you've completed, you've written, you get to see your mark in terms of how much did you get, and then you get to see comments based on what you have written. In most cases, we see by a tick to say this is correct, by cross to say that is incorrect. But then there is an element of providing you detailed information as a student or as a candidate to ensure that you understand what that cross means. According to assessor cause, you can't say someone was wrong and then you do not tell that person why they were wrong. So maybe through providing them with a marking guideline after the assessment, that's another way of telling a person that I marked you incorrect because the response should have been this. So that is why it's very important if you're a teacher or a lecturer, after your test, you give them their script, they view their script, and then you also give them a marking guideline that was used so that learners will see what they did and how you marked it in terms of telling your performance. Feedback is clear and confined to strengths and weaknesses in performance or requirements for further evidence in relation to outcome and you don't just tell a person that this is wrong without referring to a certain criteria or a certain performance standard that you are using in terms of evaluating that particular assessment. So it needs to be in line with the criteria that is used, as well as it must also talk to the outcome that we're trying to be assessed through that assessment. The type and manner of feedback is constructive, culturally sensitive, and related to the relevant party's needs. Sufficient information is provided to enable the purpose of the assessment to be met and to enable parties to make further decisions. So this section also looks into when you're providing feedback, you must be sensitive to a number of things. It can be, you can maybe say, give a feedback that is offensive to a certain culture, for example, or you may give a feedback that is sensitive to a certain individual because it might happen that we deal with now a different ranges of learners in terms of age group. Sometimes might deal with the young ones, and sometimes might deal with old people. Like when you are at the college or when you are at the university, you find there are first year students. Those are young boys and girls that are just come out of high school and they join the university or what. And then those guys, they might not take offense of things when you provide feedback. And then as opposed to someone of a different culture or race or age, maybe the person is old, and then you provide feedback in a manner that would be sensitive. So when you provide feedback, it should be feedback that is guided by the criteria that you're using and also guided by the outcomes that were assessed, not like you just say things out of context. Feedback on assessment process is obtained from the candidate, and opportunities are provided for clarification and explanation concerning the entire assessment. So when looking at feedback and in relation with how did the process of assessment took place, whereby you go through each and every step of assessment process like we were talking about yesterday on the practical. Was there a meeting to confirm the assessment that would be assessed? Did the learner agree to those terms? Did the assessor give a letter to a learner to invite for the assessment to confirm that after the discussion we had, this is the official document that says that you'll be writing on this day? So did that happen in terms of ensuring that everything is clarified throughout the entire process of assessment? So that also assists in terms of providing feedback. You provide feedback saying that I gave you enough time to prepare and I discussed with you what I will assess you, which means you're touching on the processes of assessment, but at the same time, you are giving feedback to the learner in terms of his or her performance. And then lastly, dispute and appeals that arise are dealt with according to the assessment policy. We spoke about the dispute issue at the beginning of this call, whereby I remember some of you asked some questions at the end of the lesson. I think it was the second lesson, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of where does the dispute come from, that disagreement comes from, and what is the appeal process that need to be followed in terms of appealing for a certain decision that was taken, maybe by assessor or maybe by all the participants of the assessment. And then when conducting an assessment and also looking into the criteria that need to be used when assessing an individual, there are very important questions that we're trying to ask. We're trying to check into why, what type of information, and what format, and who. So those type of questions that are very important are used to cross-check in terms of all relevant areas that are important during the assessment. Like when you need to also check why this assessment is conducted. If you recall on the document, the SAQA document, they also explain the purpose of that particular unit standard. And they also explain the assessment criteria in terms of why are you assessing this? You're assessing this because you want to check 1, 2, 3. You want to check the difference between this and that. That is the assessment criteria. And then what type of information, what type of evidence will you need to be more like a response to that particular question? Maybe you need something written, or maybe you need someone to do a practical or maybe you'll actually allow people to discuss, to present. So what type of information that you are looking for, and or what format would you use to get that type of information in terms of you are trying to assess an individual, and who is legible to write that particular assessment? Will it make the evidence sufficient? If you use a certain method, will it make the evidence sufficient if you ask for that particular evidence that you are asking for? So those are the number of questions that you ask yourself, and then at the end, you use those questions to provide feedback to an individual, because you're trying to close those sections in terms of what type of information, which means you can tell a person based on the information that's required, you did not comply because you did not provide this type of evidence that is needed. Yeah, that is a typical example of the why, the what, and the who in terms of looking into assessment. So following the conducting of assessment, the assessor now takes the opportunity of evaluating the evidence collected and comparing it to a criteria required in the unique standard. This stage, the assessor will need to decide if the evidence is sufficient to meet the criteria or whether further actions need to be agreed upon. So at this stage, that is where an assessor gets evidence and then provide feedback. The feedback might need maybe some remedial activities that a candidate they need to do, or maybe the feedback might say, well done, you did well, you are competent with this particular unit standard. So when evaluating evidence, when judging the candidate evidence, look carefully at the evidence you have collected and check that the evidence is valid, authentic, current, consistent, and sufficient. So these are the principles of assessment. If you may recall, we did explain them in terms of what valid is, what authentic is, and what current, consistent, and sufficient. Sometimes valid and current might confuse you a little bit, but it depends in terms of what are the assessment standards put in place, define current evidence as, valid evidence as, authentic evidence as, consistent evidence as, and sufficient evidence as. Like, for example, in most cases, when you look at the assessment, is it valid? We're looking in terms of if you take this assessment and you give it to someone else, it can assess the same thing in the same unit standard. If it's authentic, you're looking at who wrote or who provided this evidence. So it's like you maybe might ask for your ID. That is why CITA says I'm ID certified in a police station, and that is within 3 months, because they want to authenticate evidence in relation to your personal identity document. Current, looking at maybe the evidence that is submitted, is it recent? Like, when did you do your assessor course? You did it last year in 2023, January. Is it still valid, or is that information still current to be used? So those type of questions that one looks at when they are evaluating or judging evidence. Consistent in terms of, let's say I have 10 people that are being assessed, and then looking at the first candidate, second candidate, is there consistent in terms of maybe the date when they conducted their summative? Oh yes, there is consistent, because this group wrote their summative on the 10th of March, and they wrote it at 9 o'clock, which means there's a level of consistency in evidence among candidates. And also, you might look at consistency in a candidate, him or herself, in terms of from the evidence required, like a formative assessment, does it show that this information was provided by this candidate in relation to another evidence that candidate provided? like sometimes you'll find that the assessor might pick up that the handwritings are not the same. You would say that during your formative assessment, your handwriting was maybe mostly on uppercases, and then on your summative assessment, your handwriting is big. There's a different, so there's a level of inconsistency in terms of your handwriting. That's an example that I might use in terms of trying to clarify this concept. And then sufficient maybe is the evidence provided enough to grant you that you are competent or not. Like for example, for assessor, you do formative, you do summative, and you do your practical. The question is that sufficient? Just to give you a typical example, last year I had a group whereby we did assessor calls, and then we only assessed them based on the formative assessment and the summative, and then we did not do the practical. And reason being, we thought that these people we got them from the field, they are lecturers and they are assessing, so we just need to give them the content of the assessor course where we taught them, we discussed, we look at like we are doing right now, and then they completed their workbooks, we marked the workbook, they completed their summative, we marked the summative, and then we asked for their CV to show that they are teachers for so long and their teaching qualifications and everything, and then we submitted to CETA. And then according to us, we thought that was sufficient. And then the lady from the CETA evaluated and said, no, that is not enough. I need to see them doing the assessment. I need to see them selecting their documents so that CETA would be confident that this evidence is sufficient and they've done the practical part of conducting outcomes-based assessment. So that is the example of sufficiency of information. Is the evidence sufficient? And then you judge and you provide feedback based on that. You might tell your candidate when you are assessor that, okay, based on the evidence you've provided, you are incompetent because insufficient. Like let's say you submit workbook and you don't submit the summative and you submit your practical. I might deem you not yet competent and ask you to submit a summative because at that stage, evidence is not sufficient. I remember Mapula asked, is there a level whereby we can fail or not fail? You can be deemed not competent, Mapule, because of insufficient evidence. You can be deemed not competent based on inconsistent within your evidence. Maybe there's something that there are gaps, you don't complete this, you complete that, so things like that. And then you can be incompetent because maybe the evidence you provided is not current. Like let's say you give me your ID that was certified last year, and then CETA would say, no, we can't deem this candidate competent because the ID has expired. Let me just use that word. So that is an evidence evaluation. And then with regards to assessment decisions that assessor made, these are the decisions that you do as an assessor. You say, learner is competent, learner is not yet competent, and you can also say learner is not yet competent. Why you say learner is competent? Because the candidate has met the standard, which means all the criteria that when we put there for a learner, and the candidate has provided evidence to meet the standard. And then in the second one, the candidate has not met the standard. There are significant performance gaps that need to be addressed. The assessor recommends further actions that would result in effectively addressing these discrepancies. So you have identified as an assessor that no, there's a shortfall of evidence, and then you'd write a status or a decision that is saying not yet competent, and you advise a candidate to bring that evidence in order to address those, which means in decision number 2, there's an element of gaps that need to be addressed, because it might happen that it's not even gaps. This person doesn't understand what they're supposed to provide as evidence. So that's also not yet competent. Let's look at the third one. The candidate has failed to present sufficient evidence to meet the standard. Candidate and the assessor will now agree on further plan of action to gather additional evidence. Review date is agreed as per the assessment case, which means this person did not actually comply almost completely, and then due to that, assessor need to discuss with the candidate that when can you do that. Let us say I'm expecting your file on the 25th, and then I call you or we arrange, and then you say that no, I would bring my file, like people who are close here, and then I will take it from there. And then you bring your file, and your file is within decision 2. I'll take your file. I won't see that straight away because you just bring it and then put it there. And then when I start marking, then I'll start to see, oh, there are gaps there. And then before I can maybe update the system, I can actually talk to you and say that, no, Mr. and so or Mr. So and so, there are gaps in this section and that section. How can we address it? Because you are sitting on a stage of not yet competent. And then we discuss and you say, I know I forgot to put my ID. I'll scan it and send it to you. And then that is the gap that is absent. And then you send that ID, and then you move from decision 2 to decision 1, where I would say, okay, because the gap has been closed, this individual is competent. So that is an example of how the decision is made and what informs it. Why must I evaluate evidence against the criteria? Why? Because the criteria are there to guide you in terms of what is it that you should be assessed. You'll see on your unit standard, right at the bottom, I spoke about it yesterday, there are assessment criteria under your, what is this, learning outcomes. But below each learning outcome, there are assessment criteria that one needs to follow in terms of conducting an assessment. So even though the unit standard and qualification indicate the scope, context, and level for the demonstration of outcome to be achieved, the assessor has to check the quality of evidence before making an assessment. So you look into the assessment criteria in terms of what it says, and then on top of that, you make sure that that is in line with the assessment criteria, which outline the expectation. If there are gaps in terms of the above criteria of concern, you need to meet again with the candidate and his or her immediate supervisor. You must explain to the candidate exactly what evidence must be submitted and how or what evidence is missing and what you require. You must provide the candidate with sufficient time to provide you with evidence, with the evidence. So in some instances, we find that some are attending a training, but there's an employer that is involved. So if there's an element of not yet competent, you need to go back and discuss the action plan and include the immediate supervisor, because supervisors sometimes give a candidate time to go out and attend the call. And then if there's something that need to be done that requires more time, which means that is why it's very important to also speak to the immediate supervisor as well when you're providing feedback as well, so that they will be aware in terms of what is happening with this guy. So they will know that this person is not passing the course. The type and manner of feedback, constructive, cultural, sensitive, and related to the relevant parties' needs. So we spoke about the sensitiveness in terms of the manner you should present a feedback. But in this section, it tries to give you some tips in terms of how do you go about ensuring that you prepare yourself to provide feedback. So there's something that they call an anecdotal record, whereby a teacher writes notes based on what they are observing. It can be a language that a learner is using, a behavior, or maybe they write notes in terms of their learning. So like they document mostly things that are taking place on day-to-day basis, so that they will be able to determine the progress of that particular learner based on his or her behavior. So this is the type of collecting evidence that you can use to give feedback maybe to a parent of a child if it's a school, because you have known that every time if this child do something, it can be good, it can be bad, that you take note of that. And then once maybe there's a parent meeting or something like that, you sit down with the parent and you give feedback, because that's another type of assessment that you have done in your class, and then you give feedback in terms of what is happening. You might have days and say that from day one on this date he did this, and then I observed that after day 3 he did not do it, and then after some time he went back and do it again. So you have a record of notes in terms of what happened. But the most common guidelines as well that you are important to use, record the observation and circumstances in which the learning experience occurred. So when you provide someone with feedback that you always interact with, it's also very important to record the observation of important learning experience that takes place. Make the task of daily notes taking manageable by focusing on clearly defined objective or purposes. So let us say we are dealing with a certain candidate that wants to assess through observation, and then you also want to use that in at the stage of assisting that learner to improve, but at the end you provide feedback to that individual. So through making those daily notes and setting objective in terms of what is it that you're trying to look at in order to assist this person through his or her journey. Record data on loose leaf sheet and keep this in 3 ring binder with a page designated for each student. So let's say you're creating a file and you keep records of your special needs students, and of which you need to also align it with their assessment performance, so that when you give feedback, you say, this is what I noticed, and then you have a record and you have a system of filing whereby you can put it alphabetically according to their surname to make sure that when you provide feedback, you have a file that you use as a tool with evidence that you are using. Write notes on the SIP card and then file it alphabetically. Use note papers, or these are a number of things that one can do in terms of trying to gather some information or evidence with regards to behavior or anything, but through observation and taking notes. But tools to provide feedback. And sometimes when we give an assessment and then we give students a checklist that guide them in terms of please collect this and then this is important, and this is so many marks. The checklist with categories that we put there as assessors, it's a tool to get to gain some insight on learners' responses, and also at the same time to use it when marking and determining the level of performance for that particular student. Rating scales and rubric. I think you are aware of rubric, whereby rubric could have certain levels. There's a description of what is assessing, and then there's good, very good, poor, very poor. Within poor and very poor, there is a description as well that says that the learner did not provide this and that, and excellent, the learner excellently provided this. So those are the tools to gain information, purpose of providing feedback. You might have a portfolio that you put in some evidence as well, guided by a criteria or the assessment that is there. And evaluating student portfolios, you might find that there's a section where learners leave their assessment, everything that they've done within a certain portfolio. And then you can use that as well in order to gain some insight and then provide feedback. That is why in schools and colleges, you find that they do file moderation, because those are the activities to check whether learners are being assessed and are they giving appropriate feedback, are they assessed in an appropriate manner, and then whoever is moderating those portfolios or those POE or files will also provide feedback in terms of, students need to be guided in this manner, and also you might find that the information may end up reaching a learner in terms of giving feedback and also providing some support. Interviews, conferences, find that one might sit down with the student, ask questions, whereby at the end of the day, they will actually analyze those interviews or conferences in a bigger space, and then provide feedback in terms of their judgment of what they have collected. Providing feedback during assessment. Feedback is an important part of assessment. It is also the communication line between the candidate and the assessor. Like I mentioned earlier, there are assessments that take place during teaching and learning, whereby a learner can write and also get feedback. And there are also stages whereby a learner might be busy writing or conducting an assessment, and then the assessor will be next to a learner to say that, why did you do that? Why did you do that? Can you do this in this way? Just to assist during assessment in terms of improving maybe the level of responding by the learner or by candidate. So, but at that stage, it's also very important to provide feedback that is constructive, that will also enable a learner to be motivated to do better next time. They emphasize that feedback should be a positive learning experience for all candidates, because that assessment that feedback is taking place during assessment. So it's an ongoing thing. Candidates can cope with negative feedback if it is clear, concise, and objective. Let us say you give something, some negative feedback, but then at the same time, when you're trying to think what you are saying, it really doesn't make sense. It can maybe lead to confusion. So it's very important when you're trying to say something that is negative, you must say it in a manner that is clear, and it shows a level of maybe what is it that you're trying to do by giving that negative feedback. What is your objective of providing that particular feedback? Don't say something that will confuse your learner more. So positive feedback, they define it as a verbal and non-verbal encouragement, which gives the candidate a pat on the back the effect is to encourage, motivate, and focus the person on achievement. So when you give positive feedback, it's for motivation, basically. Say that well done, it's fantastic, good work, congratulations, things like that. So those are the positive feedback. And then there's positive constructive feedback. These are comments which give candidates detailed information about aspects of their performance, such as opportunities for development. A person has done well, but you still go deep and say that, yes, you have done well, but then I believe if you can push here, you can do even better than what you have just done. That is constructive feedback. And then we have a negative feedback whereby negative feedback undermines candidate abilities, may leave them feeling hopeless, angry, upset. And like, for example, you haven't got a clue, have you? No, that's not the way to go about it. But you don't say anything that might guide the learner. You just say you just don't have a clue. There are those rude assessors that just leave you hanging with their negative. But at the same time, this leave a learner angry, frustrated, demotivated. Some they might end up quitting. And then you have constructive negative feedback. So in this one, you come with the negative, but your negative is for the purpose of building. It's more like a supporting strategy that one uses, whereby I say that you have performed very badly. However, if you can do this, I see that there's something that can come up. If you maybe you can maybe if you can focus on chapter 1, you just give direction in terms of what is it that learner should do from that negative feedback that you just give. Because giving negative feedback is not a wrong thing to do. It's just that how do you give that negative feedback to your learner? And then the golden rule when giving feedback. As an assessor, you need to give appropriate feedback to the learner or candidate who is talking. You need to let them know that you are paying attention and trying to understand things from their point of view. Do not be like a president, be a person who is down to earth to them, so that they won't be, even if you are president of an organization, you mustn't use that bigger level. You must be at that angle whereby you are sitting at their point of view when you are trying to explain something. They mustn't be intimidated by your role as an assessor. They must see that, oh, this assessor, you remember that assessor must be empathic, or assessor must be critical, can be a critical listener or empathic listener. We spoke about that some time ago. And then there's also feedback from candidates. Also, always must listen to the learner's feedback in terms of they might highlight very important aspects to say that, no, the process was not done in the right way. Take that into consideration because it may lead to improvement, because they are also important. Handling dispute, good assessment practices include a detailed appeal procedure in case there is a dispute over an assessment. So you give your feedback, but at the same time, you might bump into disagreement with your candidate. So within your assessment practices, the appeal procedure must be included in order to deal with that. And then the appeal procedure, I think we explained this during our second lesson, whereby it goes through certain stages from the assessor, and then if you're not hit from your assessor, it moves to internal moderator. The internal moderator is not giving you what you want, then you might actually include the EQQA, which is Khetha itself, in terms of trying to come up with a solution to a problem. So that is the detailed part of giving feedback, trying to understand when and how and the right way to conduct feedback and all that. So that is what feedback is about. Any question or views or experience in this? Maybe that you have bumped in, and then maybe today we shed some light on those challenges that you had before. Anything on your side with regards to what was shared? Are we good? Following? Does it make sense? Talk to me. Or maybe let me ask a question. Simpiwe. Simpiwe, you are working?
I was saying I am following.
Oh, you good. Thank you. Police, what? Matita.
I wanted to say,
Yes,
that
Ryan.
I wanted to just say that I was wondering, in fact, we are now busy with the formative assessment,
Mhm.
answering those questions. So most of the written questions, the answers or the questions that is in the formative assessment will be probably in the summative assessment. But we're not going to get feedback from the formative assessment before we can do the summative assessment in this instance, are we? Because we want to almost want to do it consecutively.
That's a very good interpretation of the process, because if we were doing it on site, you were gonna do your workbook and then I was gonna mark it while you there, or you went home for the day after 2 days, and then I give you feedback to say that no, you don't have to answer here in your workbook like this. In preparation for your summative, that is correct, Ryan. So at this stage, you won't get feedback that will assist you in your summative. Yeah, you are absolutely correct.
Yeah, we're going to do it concurrently together.
Exactly.
All right.
That is why
Okay.
I'm talking about the practical and all that, of which the formative within your workbook was going to support as well your practical side as well as your summative side. But that's a good interpretation. Thank you for that one. Koliswa, I can't let you go without hearing from you.
Yes, sir.
Are you following?
Yes, I am following.
Wonderful. That is all I wanted to hear. Asanda, are you following?
Hello, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, 100%.
Yes, sir. I'm following. The part that I really like the most is the difference between a negative feedback and a constructive negative feedback. So I really like the difference between the two.
Yes.
Otherwise, I'm following, same with you.
Yes, it really creates some learning curve between getting that distinction, because in most cases we always run away from negative feedback, but if you go beyond, you learn that from that negative feedback you can build someone to go to the right direction. Yeah, that's a good one, Asanda. They call him Chuck. I always hear Ryan say, "Hey Chuck, are you in?" Are you following Puma?
Yes, I'm following. And
Okay.
I think on this one, it also take us as educators not to give bad feedback also, not as an assessor, also as an educator. So it works both ways when giving feedback.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And it's also very important, Samuel, to listen to your candidate as well in terms of what they are saying, that might channel you to the right direction. We might find ourselves teaching for like 5 years, but there's nothing changing. It's because maybe you don't listen to the feedback from your learners, which is very, very important. Thank you. Thank you for the time. And then let me close with Lina Boishielo. How's it going on your side? Are we still together? Are we making progress?
Yes, we are together. I'm following.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Now,
Yeah.
with that,
But I just sorry, I just have just to clarify this, because I had, when we started the course, so you said because we are starting on the 25th of March, so we need to submit both the summative and the workbook on the 25th of April.
yes.
Am I correct? Okay. So on the 25th of April, like it will be couriered and all that. So do we have to do it before it has to reach you on the 25th, or on the 25th is the last day that we're going to prepare everything and then send you, it will reach you on a certain time, or what?
Yeah, that's a good question, Lena. On the 25th, that's your deadline to complete everything. And then from the 26th, I'll start calling you guys to say that, are you ready to give me what is mine? So up until the 25th, we have enough time to push and push and push. By the 25th, after the 25th, I start talking about, I need that back. So I start that language in terms. Maybe you say, hey, 25th, can we do it on the 1st? Can we arrange for the 1st? We do. I'm open for that as well, because that would be the time for us to start talking about when are we getting it back. If you are around, we talk about where do we meet, things like that. But then we are giving ourselves timeline so that we can push ourselves for that particular time whereby I ask for what is mine, and then we go on. But that's a very good question, Lina, in order to guide us where to from there.
All right, thank you. Nothing much from my side.
Thank you. With that note, colleagues, I think we can call it a night. I don't know if we are meeting tomorrow. Are we meeting tomorrow?
I just wanted to confirm, sir. You said that if we do not meet tomorrow, or no, you didn't say that. I'm just saying if we don't meet tomorrow, you will give us we've agreed, so to say. We've agreed that after 2 weeks we will meet again, and that will be on the 18th of April. We will meet, and hopefully we would have pushed all the written work. We would have been done. We would be done with the written work by then, and then we'll take it from there.
Yes, that was more like a tentative date, and of which we can make it official to say that. But I wish we can meet tomorrow so that we can do that short assessment review section to close the theory part, and then so that I can just leave you for that time where we can meet again on the 18th. Can we agree to meet tomorrow? It won't be long. I won't kill your Friday mood. It won't be long. Just push maybe for 30 minutes, and then we close it, and then we agree on the date, as Ryan is saying. Say on this day, I'm coming back to evaluate each and every one of you, your status, your problems, and all that. And then we talk about that. If from the 18 and the 19 as well, we can also further go on if problems are huge. They need more time. And then because up until the 25th, I'm yours. So it's just that there's nothing I can do about you writing your workbook, you writing your responding to those documents. That is why I leave you alone. But I'm open. If you say, let's say, Kolisa say, hey, can we meet next week? Maybe individually, we can have a one-on-one session at this time. If you are stuck somewhere, you need me to talk to you, and then you can open for you, because from this time till you submit, I'm open. But there are things that need me to go away so that you can get your space to complete it. Can we agree for tomorrow?
Yes, sir. I don't have a problem.
Okay. Thank you. Any supporter?
Yeah, let's
You know
meet.
those? Okay, wonderful. You know, if you sit on the yes, right.
I just want to make an excuse for me because I didn't want to say anything now. But I'm going to be on the road tomorrow. I'm going to a funeral in the Northern Cape. I'll be on the road. I'm not sure what time we're going to get there, so I cannot commit for tomorrow. But I do not want the class not to have a class tomorrow just because of me. There's going to be a recording, so I believe if we can meet tomorrow, it's fine. It's just I'm not going to be in.
Now, before you sleep, you get a recording of what we have done, and then you can just have a look, because we'll be doing like a closure of the chapter, which is very short, the assessment review. So yeah, you can go well on that trip, and then we'll share the recording for you.
Thanks, sir.
No, thank you so much, and enjoy your evening. Goodbye.